My paranormal experiences involve this one entity. My name is Troy. I'm 49 years old. This experience that I had happened when I was 5 years old. The history of what I'm about to tell you revolves around a church. It's St. Martin's Catholic Church. It's in a little small area called Irish Ridge Catholic Community in Tallahassee, Texas. The church and the house that I used to live in that was next to the church is off County Road 213. And it's called Layden's Ridge Drive. My dad was a police officer, and he worked for a small little county called Kaufman County. And he didn't make a lot of money in the beginning. My mom wasn't working. And so we moved around quite a bit. And it was hard when I was, growing up, being really young. And somehow he had heard from a church that a father had a house for rent that was affordable. So he rented the place and we moved in. And it was a really nice little house, little white wood frame house. Had a really nice front porch that I used to ride my bicycle on all the time. And my room was in the very back bedroom of the house towards the left. If you were to go into the front door, you'd walk in and it would be the living room. And directly to the left was my little sister's room. And then you had my mom's room, the bathroom, and then my room. And then the kitchen was to the right. Well, we'd been living there for maybe 6 or 8 months or so, and everything seemed completely normal. I just kind of adjusted to everything pretty quickly. And I think the first thing that I remember of this experience was one night, these coyotes started howling. Right behind our house was a big, huge cotton field. In fact, the whole area used to be huge, huge cotton farm. And they grew a lot of cotton and different stuff in the area. But directly behind my house was the cotton field. And the coyotes were in the field and they were howling, but the way that they were howling sounded like children crying, and it just really freaked me out really bad. And I remember my parents having to come in my room and kind of stay with me for a little bit because I'd heard coyotes howling before, but this just was something totally different. It was just like children crying. It was very, very eerie. And then everything was normal for a month or so. And then the next thing that happened, and this gets more dramatic as these incidents happen, but I remember one night, my dad, he worked nights, and he came home early in that morning, and I remember him waking me up, shaking me and waking me up, and he was completely frantic, like something crazy was going on, and I didn't really know what was going on. And I come to, and instantly when I came to, my head was just pounding. And he's asking me who did it, what happened. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And he goes from my room back into my mom's room, and he's talking very loudly with her, asking what was going on. And, I had no idea what was going on. So I got up, and it was just maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And after I kind of woke up a little bit and, realized my dad said that he found a hammer laying in my bedroom floor. And when he came home, my mom was completely knocked out, and she had blood on the pillow. She had a big, huge knot on her head, and I had a big, huge knot on my head. And the hammer was no hammer that we owned. Had no idea where it came from. And what was really strange was there was no windows that had been open. The front door was still locked. Everything was as it was when he left to go to work. But somehow or another, me and my mom got hit in the head really hard with a hammer, and it left a huge knot on both of our heads. And it was really weird. And to this day, my dad's passed away now, but before he passed away, me and him used to talk about it all the time. And he never could figure out where the hammer had come from or what happened. But after that, a week or two went by, and I collected Star Wars toys. That was one of my favorite toys. And I had a radio-controlled R2-D2. And this R2-D2 sat on a little stand that was by my window. If you were in my room sitting on my bed, I had a window directly behind my bed, one to my right and one to my left. And then directly in front of me was my closet. And to the left, I had like a little nightstand thing that I had some Star Wars figures on. and I had the R2D2 on there, and it was turned off. In fact, I think that the remote control to it was lost in my closet somewhere. Had no idea where it was at, but it was a cool little toy, so I kept it and had it sitting there. And it was about the middle of the night, and all of a sudden this thing just lights up, starts going crazy, moving back and forth. It just like completely, it woke me up like a bomb went off. I jump up and this thing is making, R2D2 sounds and moving back and forth, and just lights are flashing on it. And I jump up and I run into my mom and dad's room, and they run in there, and my dad grabs it and it's still just moving around. And, he looks and it's like turned off, and he couldn't figure out how in the world this thing was working. But his theory at the time, I remember him talking about it, saying that, well, maybe a CB radio from a truck driver caused it to go off. So, he took the batteries completely out of it and it stopped working, and that was the end of that. Well, this is where everything really starts going into high gear. And I call this thing the thing in the tree. And here in a little bit, you'll understand why. After that, I got to where I was kind of paranoid at nighttime because so many things had happened now that I didn't really sleep very well. So frequently I would get up out of bed and run to the window and look out the window, and I'd turn my light on and look out the window and just make sure, that there was nothing outside and everything was good. And it's one particular time that I did it. The window that was next to the R2D2, the one that was to my left, I jumped up and I turned the light on. And I opened the curtain, and as soon as I opened the curtain, okay, let me explain. There's a tree that is right beside the window. There's only maybe 2.5, 3 foot between my window and the tree. It's an oak tree, or top of an oak tree, and it was a really old tree, and it was just growing right beside my window. I opened my curtain up, and instead of seeing this tree, there's this creature. I don't know if it was demonic. I'm assuming that it probably was demonic for many reasons that I'll get into, but mainly just the way that it looked. This wasn't like an alien. This was some crazy looking creature. And this is what it looked like. It was approximately 6 foot tall. My dad was 5'9", and it was taller than my dad. It was about 6 foot tall and super bony, skinny. And the skin that it had was a lot like frog skin, but it was just really dark OD green looking color. And the skin was very slick and smooth, and it was just pulled really tight over the bones of this thing. And it had chameleon eyes, like the chameleon lizard. Its eyes were exactly like chameleon eyes, and they kind of protruded out in a cone shape coming out of its head. And it had no nose. It just had 2 slits for a nose, and it completely bald. There was no hair on it, nowhere, completely smooth, shiny, smooth. And as soon as I saw it, normally you would think that, a child my age seeing something like that would, scare you to, especially everything that just happened, it would just scare you to death, and, I would freak out. But this wasn't the case. In fact, when I saw it, it was soothing, and it was like an old friend, or it was just seemed so familiar to me, and I wasn't scared of it at all. And I would sit there and stare at it, and it would never move. None of its arms would move. It would never, ever move, except for occasionally its eyes would flick down like just super fast, just faster than I could blink. Its eye would swoop down, look at me for just a second, and then go right back up. And it was just like it was a statue just standing there. And the strange thing is if you turn the light out and looked at it, it wouldn't be there. Only the tree would be there. But as soon as you turn the light on and look, it would be there. And it was just as clear as could be. It was actually standing, right by the window. I could see every detail of it. And I remember for weeks and weeks, I would sit and just stare at this thing. And for years after this, I've always tried to figure out if it communicated to me in any way, because it always felt like maybe that it did communicate to me, but telepathically, kind of just weird, not even really telepathically, just in some weird way. It would communicate weird things to me, more like a feeling than anything. I never had like thoughts of it in my head. It was just these feelings that it would make me feel. And I think that's how it kind of communicated to me. And so this went on for maybe 9 months or so. And then one day, me and my mom, we were walking from my bedroom. This was during the daytime. My little sister was about 1 year old, and she had her bedroom in the front bedroom. And me and my mom were walking from my bedroom into, cause you had to go from my bedroom down this little hall, go to the left just a little bit. And then that would go into the main living room. And then my parents' room was straight ahead from inside that hall. And you go into the living room, go around the couch, and to the right was where my sister's room was at. And so we walk, and as soon as we go into the living room to go towards my sister's room, this huge black, like a panther, it looked exactly like a black panther, runs from our living room across the floor and goes into my sister's room. And I remember my mom completely flipping out. She thought that this huge panther was in the house, and it just ran in my sister's room. And I remember her screaming and hollering, just running in there, and I'm running behind her. And we run in there, and there's nothing there. It's completely gone. And my sister's still asleep, and we look around everywhere, and she asked me, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah, I saw that. We both saw that. And that night when my dad came home, or the next morning when he came home, he'd worked hours and hours, and he came home and we told him, and he didn't believe us. He thought that maybe my mom had seen something and kind of projected it on me and made me think that I saw it. But I told him, and she would tell him, no, we both seen it. It was definitely something, but he just kind of wrote it off. My dad, he was just kind of like that. If he didn't see it himself, he just really wouldn't believe it right off. Well, maybe a couple weeks after that, something else strange happened. I was outside riding my tricycle, and I was riding up and back and forth. Or actually, it was a Power Wheels, one of those plastic old Power Wheels, back and forth up and down the sidewalk in front of my house. And this van pulls up beside our house and stops for a split second. And it had been traveling really fast down the road that was in front of the house. And I remember it just stopped really fast. And then I heard like doors open, and after the doors open, it sped off, and there was a woman there completely naked, and she was just completely no clothes on or nothing. She walks up. She's like going, please help, please help, please help. I freak out and I run in the house, and I tell my mom that there's a woman outside completely naked. My mom comes running out. She sees her. The woman's walking up to our door. So my mom runs in and she gets some towels or a sheet or something. I don't remember. I remember her giving her something that she wrapped the woman up in, and she brought the woman in the house, and they called my dad, because I don't think my dad was home at the time. Seems like they called my dad, and he came with a bunch of other police officers. And what had happened was the woman had been kidnapped, and the people had, had her for a while and just dropped her off, and happened to be in front of our house of all places. And, which is really crazy. So it was just like one thing after another living there. And so maybe a month, maybe 2 months after that happened, I had a friend over spending the night, and, we used to hang out a lot and play G.I. Joe or play Star Wars or, whatever. And he was going to spend the night with me. And so we played up until about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And, we were, told to go to bed. And before I went to bed, it's like it dawned on me I'm going to show him the thing in the tree. So I'm like, hey, you want to see something? And he's like, yeah. So I take him and I'm like, look, check this out. And I open the window, and there it is standing there. And as soon as he sees it, he completely flips out. He starts screaming and screaming and screaming and hollering. And my dad ran in. He thought that maybe I'd hit him or did something. He runs in, and to backpedal just a second, I had told my dad a couple of times about this thing in the tree, but he never would go and look at it. It was always at nighttime. He didn't want to mess with it. He was either getting ready to go to work, or it was just always something he never had time to see it. So he would just shove it off, and I would too. And eventually I just gave up on even telling him about it. And so my friend, his name is Larry, he was freaking out, screaming and hollering, and my dad comes running in, and he's like, what did you do to him? Did you hit him? And Larry's like, no. There's something standing in the window. And so my dad goes to the window, and he opens the window. And as soon as he opens the window, I knew that he was going to see it too. And he opens the window, and he's looking at this thing. And I said, see, Dad, I told you I was telling you the truth. And my dad, the expression he had on his face when he saw this thing, it was like I'd never, ever seen that look from my dad or from anybody really at this time. And my dad turns and he looks at me, and he had just this most sincere, most just scared to his core look on his face. He looks at me and he says, Troy, I don't want you to ever look at this again. Don't ever look at this again. And he shuts the curtain. And I think that they ended up taking my friend home. And that was the first moment in my life that I had felt that type of fear, like a life and death type fear. It's still to this day, all these years later, 44 years later, I'm still very deeply affected by that very moment in my life, because it was the very first moment that I felt any type of fear like that. Well, it was shortly after that we moved from that place. And throughout the years, whenever me and my dad would talk about it, my dad would tell me that when he went to rent the place, that the father of the church had told him many times that he couldn't keep people in the place, that they wouldn't stay very long. And I don't know. I don't think my dad told the father that we were moving out because there was something in the house or in the tree. We moved out, and we moved to a place that was close to my mom's mom and dad, my grandparents. And throughout the years, it was something that was always in the back of my mind, but it was something my dad was very uncomfortable about talking about, especially as when I was a kid anyway. We talked about it often once I got grown, but growing up as a kid, it was just like something I didn't bring up. If I brought it up, my dad would quickly change the subject or say, we're going to talk about that right now. And so throughout a lot of years of my life, it's just something that I put in the back of my mind and forgot about. Well, that was until I was probably about 23 years old, and I got with this girl, and her brother ended up went in with me, and it was just me and her brother. And we would dabble in tarot card reading and psychic mind reading and harmless stuff like that, Ouija boards and stuff like that. And we wanted to kind of have paranormal experiences, go to graveyards or go to places where there was ghosts or something like that. Kind of like in paranormal investigator, that's the word I was looking for, to do something kind of like that. So we would go out and check out places, and we'd ask friends if they knew of any haunted houses or anything like that. And we would go check them out and see if we'd have any experiences there. And one day it just like it dawned on me, hey, it's been many, many years. I wonder if that house and the thing in the tree is still out there. We should go check that out. Of course, I told her all about it, her brother, and they were just completely blown away. They're like, this is crazy. We got to go check this out. So one day we picked a day and we drove, and because it was about 65 miles from where I lived at that time. So it was a good drive to get there. So we drive and we get there, and I pull up into the parking area of the house, and the house is still just like I remember it. Nothing has changed. In fact, no one was living there. It's completely vacant. And we pull up and get out, and I look around and check everything out, and I take them around behind, where my bedroom is at, and I show them the tree and the thing, used to come out and stand between the tree and the window, and they're like, man, it was right there, because it was just literally a foot and a half, 2 foot away. And nothing really strange happened. We just kind of looked around, and we got in the car, and we drove. Instead of turning around and getting back on the main road and going back the way we came, I decided to drive a little ways down the other way from the house. there's like the main road you turn off of, you turn left off the main road, and then the house is on the left, and you could keep going straight down that road for a good couple miles. And there was a little pond that I used to fish at, and I had some friends that lived down there. So kind of a nostalgia type thing. I just wanted to kind of drive down the road and check everything out. So, we take a drive down the road, and I'm showing them where this friend lived or whatever. And we turn around at the end of the road, and we're heading back. And as soon as I get right in front of the house, because from the house, it's like there's the house, then there's the church, and then the main road. So from the house to the road is maybe 75, 80 feet, 100 feet. So I'm like right in front of the house, about to be to the stop sign. And as soon as I get in front of the house, it was the craziest thing I've ever felt in my life. It felt exactly like something hit me very hard, except not my physical body, but my perception, my vision. It felt like I had been hit, knocked out of the car. I'm instantly like sideways, almost on the ground, and I'm seeing the ground move underneath me. I'm seeing everything around me. I look and I see the car door, and I look up and I see myself still behind the wheel of the car. And it's just like this split second, and all of a sudden, bam, I'm back in my body, and I slam on the brakes because I'm about to go right across the stop sign into the road. And I slam on the brakes, and I think I pulled into the little parking area that was next to the church. And I pull in, and my girlfriend at the time and her brother's like, "What's wrong? What happened?" I said, I told them what had just happened. It felt like I'd been knocked out of my body. And I told her she's going to have to drive because I didn't feel like I could drive. It completely just freaked me out. And so we left, and I didn't want to go back there for quite some time. Well, maybe a year or two pass, and I moved from that place back to Tyrrell, the town where I was born and raised at, is Tyrrell, Texas. And Tyrrell, Texas is about 10 miles or so from Forney, Texas, and Forney, Texas is just about 5 miles from Taunty. So I'm living in Tyrrell, and I'm living with some people, and they are kind of also into the same thing: tarot card reading, Ouija boards, and typical ghost stories and stuff like that. And I ended up telling the girl that I was living with, we weren't together. She was just renting a room to me, but her brother also lived there, and he was more into it than anybody else in the house. And I told him about what had happened, and he believed me, but he was still very, very skeptical that anything like that happened there. So for a few days, he kind of messed with me. You're just making that up. That's too crazy. I'm like, I can take you out there. You can check it out for yourself. And so one day he's like, okay, well, let's drive out there. Let's go. It's not that far. Let's go. So we get in his car and we drive out there, and we pull into the parking lot that's beside the house, and we get out, and we walk up to the house, and the house is still vacant. In fact, we look in the windows, and it looked like they were getting ready to get rid of it, because there's like some walls that had been knocked out inside the house. You could see through one window right through to the next window. There's just absolutely nothing in the house, completely cleared out. And the meter had been pulled, electrical meter had been pulled. We knew that because when we walked by the house, we looked, and they had the cover over the meter box and everything. So the house has just been vacant for a long, long time. So I take him behind the house, and we go to where my bedroom is, and I show him the tree, and he's looking at it, and he's like, I don't feel anything strange. I don't have any weird feelings by this place. It feels completely normal. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. These things really happen, and I don't know if you believe me or not, but I mean, it happened. And something in my mind told me to break a branch of the tree off to carry with me. So I found a good sized branch of the tree, and I broke the tree off because I wanted to have a limb of the tree just kind of keep with me. And I still have it to this day, actually. But I'll break the limb off, and we start walking back to where the car is, and we're walking behind the house because that's where the tree was. So, we're walking, and we're about to turn right to go back towards his car, and there's like a little utility room at the end of the house. That's where the washer and dryer was, and the hot water heater and all that was in the little utility room. And it had a little back door that you could open with the little steps that came down, and it had a porch light that was right there. And we're walking, and we get just right there by the porch light, and the light comes on. And instantly, me and Jason stop when we look at it. And then it dawned on Jason, like at the exact same time that it dawned on me. He's like, hey, man, there's no power in this house. There's no meter box. And I said, I told you this, something's crazy. So he's like freaking out. And we get in the car and we take off and we go back and he tells everybody. And from that day on, he's like, Troy, I totally believe you, man. And he said, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was just like letting us know. He got the same feeling I did, like, letting us know that, recognized me. And it was like saying hi. So a few months went by and I was with another friend. He had been invited to go to a party in Dallas, Texas. And so we go to this party and it's real late at night and there's a guy playing drums and, there's some guitars and stuff there. And I played guitar with him and he drummed and, we're kind of hanging out and there's a lot of people at this party. It's a really, really huge house and there's probably 25 people at this party and they're all just going, here and there. But the people that own the house, they weren't there. And the girl that lived there, she was an artist and she would paint big murals and she did a lot of graffiti art and a lot of different types of painting. So they told me that the guy would be here, anytime. So just kind of hang out. So we're just kind of hanging out and kicking back. And then we hear like some people talking loudly in the front and laughing. And, we walk up there and the guy that owned the place, he comes walking in. And the crazy thing is he is one of my friends that I went to school with all through middle school, high school. We went to school together and we hadn't seen each other since I was a little bit older than him. So I graduated before he did. And, we hadn't seen each other in years and years and years. And we run up, we're like, hey man, what's going on? And give him a hug. And he's like, man, this is crazy seeing you here. We're just talking about old times. And it was really cool because it was like, this was his party and I was like an old friend. So he was introducing me to everybody and showing me around. He was telling me about his girlfriend that, she was this really amazing artist and everything. And so he's like, come in the back bedroom back here and let me show you what she painted on the wall. So we walk back there and I'm with my friend that took me to the party. His name was Harold. And so me and Harold were walking back in the back bedroom and he opens the door and we walk in and painted on the wall is like this window and you're looking through the window and there's this creature that is identical to the thing that I saw in the window. I mean, just identical, painted on the wall. And the way she painted it, you could tell it was standing in front of a tree and everything. And as soon as I saw it, I backed up against the other wall and just kind of collapsed to the ground. And Harold, he knew about the story. I told him about it several times and he kind of crouches down and he's like, it's the thing in the tree, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And so he's like, wow, this is really, really weird. And so the whole night was a really, really strange night. We left. I go back home and maybe 5 years go by and, I take it back. Maybe not quite that long. A good year or two goes by. No, it was quite some time. I ended up getting with this older woman. She was much older than me, but she was a Native American woman and she was very, very tied to her traditional spiritual ways. And she was very, very much into magic and mysticism and far more than anything that I'd ever been into or seen at the time. She was always doing different stuff. And, it's what really kind of drew me to her. And it was very shortly into us getting together that I told her about the thing in the tree and all the experiences that I'd had with it. And she wanted to see it. It was something that she had to see. And so we planned a day and we went with her and one of our good friends. In fact, her friend was the one that drove us there. And we drive and we pull up into the front of the house and the whole house is gone. They'd completely demolished the house. And the only thing that was there was the actual floor of the house. It was like the whole house had been completely stripped down to the wooden floors. And that's all that was there. The porch was still there. You could walk up on the porch and you could just walk right onto the wooden floor of the house. There was no walls. In fact, you could see where the walls used to be, but there was no walls. There was no nothing. And the tree had been cut down and I was completely devastated. It was just like, I could not believe that it looked like this and it was gone. And it was just crazy. So the first thing that I do is I walk on the floor all the way back to where the tree was. I kind of step off onto the ground and the stump of the tree is there. And, I put my hand on the tree and felt the deep sadness for it. And she's just kind of there with me. And I get back up and I get on the floor and I walk and I'm showing her that this was where my bedroom was at. My bed sat here. And, I'm kind of giving her the layout of how the house was in the room. And I noticed that, like I told you, you could see where the walls used to be. And you could see where my closet used to be from the room. And I noticed a lot of like debris and different stuff that was kind of sticking up where the wall was the wall, but the wall's not there. So there's like this cavity where the wall's at. And so there's like this debris and stuff sticking up. And I walk over to it and I look down, and this is crazy because I was in second grade. When I was living in that house, I was in second grade. And I remember Valentine's Day taking red construction paper and we made these little Valentine's hearts, and they had them laminated, and it was plastic laminated. And I remember it plain as day in second grade doing that. And I remember, giving it to my mom or dad, probably my mom. So there it is, sitting on top of all of the debris where my closet wall would have been that separates my closet from the bathroom. And I pick it up and I remember making it. And as soon as I pick it up, I get this overwhelming feeling of like, it was like a message telling me, that everything was going to be okay. Everything was fine. And I showed it to my girlfriend and she freaked out. She's, wow, that's crazy. I told her that I remember making it, and she kind of had a feeling from it. And I think I gathered up a few nails and a piece of the floorboard wood and, just some relics to keep from the house. And so we leave, and I went back maybe a couple times after that, and it's completely gone. They just turned it into a big parking lot for the church now. And the tree's completely gone, and you can't even tell where anything was at anymore there. And so that was like all of the main experiences I've had. But this thing has stuck with me throughout my life. And even to this day, I'll have just very, very strange encounters, strange things happen, and I instantly feel like that it's connected to the thing in the tree. And later in life, as I grew up, me and my dad would talk about it. And my dad, he just absolutely believes it was something demonic. He said as soon as he saw it that he felt that it was just absolutely, truly evil, which was strange because it just seemed really calming and soothing to me. It had no evilness to it, even though it looked extremely evil. It looked every bit as like a demon would look. But, we would talk about it all through life, and he told me that he felt it was evil and that it was the very reason we moved from there so quickly was because he knew that we were telling the truth from all of the things that happened. And I mean, other things would happen in the house too. Things would get moved around. And my mom I remember her always talking about she would shut like the icebox door and go back and the icebox door would be open, or the washing machine would come on by itself sometimes. Just really weird, typical poltergeist type stuff. And my dad said that as soon as he saw that, he knew that everything we'd been telling him was true, and that it just really scared him so bad that we were having all these encounters, because he never really encountered anything on his own. It was always just me and my mom. So, it just all made sense to him. And he told me that it was probably one of the most intense things he'd ever seen in his life. And that's the story of my paranormal experiences with the thing in the tree.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.